Ahoy, salty dogs. My name is Lenscap. Welcome back to Project Titan. Power 2.0 is out, not Thruster Cap. Power 2.0 is out, and today we're going to take a look at refitting one of our ships, the Bandit Class specifically. I wanted to kind of get it updated and ready for new power, and I'm ready for new power. I'm so excited to do this today. Okay, but for the sake of clarity, for the sake of openness and honesty, I've already done this. I had a live stream and I played around with the new power stuff. I got really frustrated to the point where I was like, screw this game, man. I never want to see this again. It's awful, it's garbage, and I'm so annoyed. And then I kind of went over... It was kind of funny, actually. You could watch all 5 stages of grief during the course of my live stream. It was, yeah, and then I kind of accepted it and decided to work with it, and overall, it's a good experience, right? I really like the new power now. There are a couple things I have a couple issues with, but I've already spoken to the devs about those, and they may or may not patch them. Whatever. I just wanted to hear my voice to be heard, so, and I feel like it has been. Alright, so this is, for those of you who are new, some of you guys are new subscribers, especially with this new big update. So, let me introduce my fleet real quick, and then we'll talk about kind of what we're going to do today, and how we're going to work on it. So this is probably going to be a little bit longer of an episode, so I appreciate your patience. Bear with me while we work through this. All right, quit talking, Lenscap. This is my Bandit Class shuttle. This is like my scout ship, right, of my fleet. So my fleet is all based on these like solar sails. You can see the fleet here in the background. But today we're focusing on this ship. By the way, if you guys hear some chirping, that's my little parakeet. He's hanging out with me in my office here today. So this shuttle is focused on, you know, going fast and getting away from enemies and checking out new territory before it gets exploded, right? So that's its role in the fleet. Now we're going to try and emulate this with the new power and see if we can make it better. So as it stands right now, the 2 main things we're going to look at are thrust to mass ratio, because that determines, you know, how quickly we can accelerate. So 2.2 with a max speed of, let's call it 530. And then also we want shields, right? Because if we get shot, we want to make sure we can live through it. Hopefully, that's the hope. This ship has 1,800 shields, call it 1,900 shields, right? Alright, so that's what we're working with here. I do always put I feel like a reasonable interior inside my spaceships. So this one has like a couch and a little tiny bit of storage, as well as this thing, transporter. That's the word. All right, so that's the Mark III of the Bandit Class. So that's the 3rd iteration of this ship that I've designed. And here we have the Mark IV of the Bandit Class. Now this is the one I designed on stream, on Twitch. Excuse me. And I was really struggling with this ship, but I was able to actually get the new power in one of my existing shells of a ship, and I thought, honestly, for the first like hour and a half, 2 hours of the live stream, I thought it was impossible. I was going to give up on the game completely because it's so different the way you have to think when you're building ships now that I was really annoyed. But, you know, persevere. It's gonna be fine. Just, it's a puzzle, right? Figure it out. Figure out the changes. How does it work now? What's different? So here's the ship now. We've got a similar setup. We still have our transporter. We still have our seating area. We still have some cargo. There's actually more of all of those things, so that's good. I don't think you can actually sit at these tables, though. Yeah, you can't actually sit at the chairs, but it's whatever. You could move the table if you wanted to actually sit there. Okay, but let's compare the statistics, right? Because that's the important thing. So we can already see 17,000 shields. That's huge. We had just under 2,000 before, and then we have 17,000. That is a ridiculous update. That's amazing. That's so good. All right, and for thrusters, 1.8 energy per second, and a lower max speed. So that's still a pretty good thrust to mass ratio, right? I know a couple other builders that I play with shoot for like 0.8, and I'm almost, I'm double that, so I'm doing great. Max speed is lower, but that's okay. Because again, whatever. Thrusters, for me, were the hardest thing. That's what I struggled with the most. The structural integrity bits that they added, we'll talk about this in a minute in further detail, but yeah, structural integrity for thrusters really was the hardest part for my brain head to grasp about how to do this. All right, so that's the Mark IV. We're not going to talk about this too much. Today we're going to work on the Mark V and see if we can do better. So I have over here the third Bandit class in our lineup. This one is gutted. So there are no systems in here. It's just a shell. It's only hull and a couple decorative things, ice crystals and lava and crap like that. There's not even any, there's nothing, right? It's completely gutted. So today, we're going to try and fill this puppy with systems and get a ship that's even better than the Mark IV that we've made. So if we hop in the core, here's our ship. I found, for me, now your mileage may vary, of course, everybody builds differently, but I found for me, when I'm outfitting old ships like this, I work best if I start with the thrusters, because for me, that's the hardest thing to get right, so I want to do that first, and go ahead and get it out of the way. Now, let me kind of show you what I'm working with here. So if we take our thrusters on our bar, right? I want to make sure I've got two requirements for my thrusters, right? I want a high thrust to mass ratio, and I want to be able to see the plumes, the thrust plumes, when from the back when I'm accelerating. The thrust plumes turn out to be the hardest part of this. The way I built previously, I had visible thrusters, right? So this whole thruster compartment would be completely full of thrusters like this. And then you'd leave a space behind the ice, and then put thrusters here, and that's what would let you, right, see the thruster plumes. But I'm already at negative 25 integrity. So that's not going to work. Even if we join these two groups of thrusters together and make it just one group of thruster, negative 61, it's worse. It's worse. And the more thrusters we add to this, the worse our thruster integrity gets. So that is a little bit annoying, but it just means we have to change the way that we build our thrusters. And this video is here to hopefully inspire you guys and teach you the trials and tribulations I went through as I was learning this new system. So the best way to do thrusters is to make one big block of them. The structural integrity wants you to group stuff together. It wants you to make large masses. Especially with thrusters, you want one big mass of thrusters. And I actually managed to get the plumes as well doing this. It took some tweaking. It was really tough, but I did it. And the way I did it was ignoring the decorative thrusters I had on the sides, right? So I had it before, so you could see some thrusters like this, visual systems, right? That's my build style. Can't really do that very much anymore. Not with this anyway. So I switched. We said, okay, so what's another thing we can put that looks kind of like, that we could work. So I went with the Astrotech computers. They look kind of like wiring or something. So I did those as the visual parts, as the visual block. Now they don't hurt our ship in any way, and they still look pretty cool. They give us this wiring effect on the outside of our thrusters, so I'm okay with that. It doesn't look so bad. Alright, so we'll add that in. And then we're going to add in our thrusters in the same spot, so we still get the plumes. And then the goal is a singular mass of thrusters it has to be relatively rectangular, otherwise your integrity tanks. So what I did was a 3x3 like this, and this was my main thruster mass, and then kind of connected it to these guys. So our integrity now is 94, but as we work our way outwards, we can get something that works for us. Now, I want to think about thrust to mass ratio at this point. So I've got my plumes in, and now I want to make sure that I've got some good thrust to mass ratio. So right now we have 168.2 thrust, you can see right here. So let's compare that to our mass. So our mass is 101. Now we're going to add a lot of mass with system blocks, so let's go ahead and double this. Let's account for 200 mass. So we want, if we can, we want to get 400 thrust out of this. So we should be able to do that. You can't really just expand thrusters willy-nilly, right? That tanks your integrity. See, we dropped from 71 to 64 just by adding these 2 thrusters, because we had one on either side, and that tanks it. But if we keep doing a box like this, then our integrity actually went up to 80. So we added a lot of thrust, and we actually added integrity. So that's good. So we can keep adding thrust like this. Now we're at 76, and our thrust is at 281. Let's keep going. So now we're at 335 thrust. Let's do one more thing of thrust. Alright, so that gets us to 387, and our integrity is still at 74. So if we wanted, we might be able to trim off a row of this. And now we've got some integrity to play with. So we can throw them on the sides. Okay, and maybe in a couple of other places to try and slim down our thrust, like our block of thrusters here. So we're at 411. So that's pretty good, right? But the trick is build cubes. Build cubes. I feel like the purpose of this was to avoid the cubes, but it ended up just making it more cubes. So I guess it is what it is. But that's what we've got, so that's what we're working with. Alright, so we're at 64 integrity. We have 358 thrust. Let's see if we can work a little bit more thrust in here. Can we put thrusters here? Like this? How's that do? So we're still above 0 integrity, so we're good. So we can keep adding blocks until our integrity hits 0, or until we have 400 thrust, which is what our goal was. Cool. So this is going to work for us, and we've got our 400 thrust, which is going to be roughly double our mass. So we're already doing well. So the next thing I want to consider is how much space this mass of thrusters is actually taking up, and I think this might be too much. So I feel like maybe we went a little overboard with the thrusters. But as a demonstration for how you can get a decent structural integrity in a small ship, I feel like that was pretty good, right? And we can keep adding to this if we want more thrust. But I feel like let's actually peel this back by just one layer here to give us a little bit more room for our reactor here. We still have 300 thrust, which is 3 times what our mass is. I think we're doing fine with that. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is put in our reactor. Now, things about reactors you should know. The first 10 blocks you get are free. What I mean by that is you don't have to include a stabilizer whatsoever with only 10 blocks. Now, each 10 additional blocks to that makes your chambers like larger, right? Like they level up. They kind of rank up or whatever that way. So the chambers have to be bigger as well. So ideally, you want your reactor at a 9, right? So, 10 blocks is fine, but then like 19, 29, 39, etc., 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 to kind of alleviate that chamber size increase. So we're going to shoot for a 19 block reactor on this ship. So we got 4, 5, so let's do 6, 7, 8, 9, so we're at 10, 14, 18. We can add one more, but let's go for 18. That's close enough. That's pretty decent. That'll probably work for us. Now also you'll notice that we need stabilizers as well. We'll get to stabilizers. We also have integrity for the reactor, so you can't just like do a reactor like this. which actually that's still somehow a decent reactor, but whatever. Yeah, so your reactor has integrity too, so just keep that in mind. Alright, so we're also going to need to do stabilizers in this ship. Now, this ship is not long enough for optimal stabilizer placement. Optimal placement is like here, but you don't have to be optimal. You just have to be. It just means you need more stabilizers, which in our case is fine, because we've got tons of room inside of the ship for these kinds of things. So I put 2 groups of stabilizers up in the ceiling here, and we're just going to run these all the way back to about where they quit affecting the reactor. So it seems like that's as far back as they can go. Any closer than this, and they're too close to the reactor to actually have any effect. So that's where we're going to put them. We can increase the size of these groups as well to increase our stabilization effect. Let's see if we can get up to 100%. Beautiful. So that gets us up to 100% right there. That's exactly what we want. Now, we want to hide these ugly purple power sausages, or whatever they are, and to do that, you use these reactor stabilizer stream nodes. And I found the easiest way to do this is touch one to your reactor. Now, that kind of gets them out of the way, but we want them even further out of the way than that. We actually can probably put it farther away, maybe like here. Yes. And then that gets it even further away, and then we can also put one there, which even further gets it out of the way. Now you'll notice that when I place the one closer to the stabilizers, it moved the stream. But that's an easy fix. You can just hit C on the one near the reactor and V on the one near the stabilizers. Hello, V. Hello, V to link. It didn't work at first. And that fixes the stream to be the way you want. Alright, so that'll get those out of the way, so now they're not in our visual range. So the next thing about reactors are chambers, and chambers are like the point of this update, and the most amazing aspect of it, in my opinion. Chambers are what makes this update awesome. So the chambers basically give your ship a skill tree, and yeah, so this ship, we're going to put an FTL skill tree in it. You can have multiple reactors with multiple different skill trees if you want, but the reactors have a limited number of, like, skill points. They're not called that, but that's kind of what they are. Have a limited number of skill points that you can assign to your ship so that you kind of have to build your ship with a specific, like, goal in mind, right? Like, this ship is going to be FTL, so it's going to have chambers that focus on faster than light travel or your jump drive. And you don't need a jump drive computer. You don't need jump drive modules anymore. All you need are these chambers. In fact, if we look at our G menu, we already have a scanner and a jump drive without even doing anything. So that's good. But we want to improve that jump drive. We want to make it better. So let's plop down a conduit. You have to have these reactor conduits coming off of your reactor and touching your chambers. Now, your chambers don't necessarily, though, like you have to have this, but the chambers can be wherever you want, as long as they're touching the reactor through the conduits, right? But the chambers themselves can be touching the reactors as well. So that's not a problem. With a reactor this size, we need 5 chambers. Let's go ahead and add another reactor block, just so we have 19. Alright, so we need 5 chambers. And now if we go into our ship reactor menu, then you can see we have an FTL chamber here. By the way, let's look at this real fast. If we go to ship and reactor, you see level 1 next at 19 out of 20 blocks. If we add another reactor block, and we go into reactor, now it says level 2. If you look at this FTL, reactor FTL chamber, then down here it says minimum size requirement 10, and our size is 5. That means our chamber has 5 blocks, and that's all we want. We don't want to have 10 block chambers, not on a reactor this small. If we're going to add our block count up to 29, then, but we're not doing that. 19 blocks should be good for us. Alright, but now if we go back into our ship and our reactor menu, you can see size 5, minimum size required 5, so we can assign this chamber. Now this is like our base FTL chamber, so we hit specify chamber, and there are 3 different skill trees within the FTL chamber tree. I don't know, whatever, skill trees. You can do jump drive, you can do warp drives if you're on a station, or you can do jump inhibitors, which are, well, what jump inhibitors were. They're not a thing anymore. Now you have to spec into them if you want them. But anyway, so we do jump drive base, and that's what this chamber does. So this chamber just basically unlocks the jump drive tree for us. So now if we want to look at, by the way, if you want to see a tree you don't have chambers for, you can right click on it and go to show full tree. But so if we want to add effects to this jump drive, we have to branch off of this base chamber now instead of off of the reactor again. So what we want are power efficiency, multi-charge, and auto-charge. No, we don't. Power efficiency and jump distance. So we want these options. We want all of these options. So that means off of this jump drive base, we need 1, 2, 3, 4 chambers, all coming off that one chamber. And these are denoted by these blue lines, so that means there have to be conduits. The green lines indicate different levels of the chamber, so we'll talk about that in a second. Let's go ahead and do our jump distance, because we want that maxed. We want to jump as far as we can every time, if possible, so we're going to max that out. Let's go ahead and make a jump distance chamber here. One thing to note about the chambers is that like chambers cannot touch like. So if I were to place my conduit there and then do my chamber kind of like this, it's going to register as these blocks being added to this chamber, or at least some of them. See how it's activated now? And we don't want that. We don't want that. So we have to kind of be smart about how we build our chamber. This conduit is also touching the reactor, and that'll cause some problems as well down the line. So we don't want the conduits touching the reactor unless the tree calls for that. In this case, it doesn't. So we're going to put our conduits there, and we're actually going to build 2 chambers at once here, but we need to get 5 blocks for this kind of conduit for our chamber. So the easiest way to do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that gets us our chamber there. Generally, my chambers tend to just envelop my my reactor like that. Cool. So now if we go back into our reactor menu, you can see we've got 2 little branches off the jump drive base, and that's because we had symmetry on, so we built 2 chambers. So if we take this left one, we can do specify chamber, and we're going to make this jump distance. Alright, so we just set it as jump distance 1, and then we can click this level up button. So that's what those green lines indicate, are different levels that you can add to a chamber. So while this is level 1, you know, we only need 1 chamber for this, but we can make it a stronger version of the same chamber by leveling it up. Now, doing that requires more of this reactor capacity. So these are like your skill points, basically. All right, so we level this all the way up to 3, and we're already using more than half of our of our reactor capacity. So that's no good. And we can't really improve on that in any way. But let's go ahead and add this next chamber. For this one, we're gonna do multi-charge. And we're just gonna put multi-charge 1 for this. So that lets us have 2 charges in our jump drive now. So if we test this, if we go into our cockpit and we click our jump drive, and we just click once, and we don't have auto charge or anything yet, so you got to hold it. But you can see it says, let's see, you can see it says 0 out of 2 right here. So we can charge our jump drive 2 full times and use it twice. We don't have to have 2 jump drives this way, basically, is what that gives us the option for. All right, so we've got that. Now, the next thing we want is auto charge for sure, because that's awesome. So let's add another chamber here, but it's got to come off the base chamber. So we're going to go off the base, and we're going to add 5 more blocks like this. That's perfect. We'll go to ship, reactor, and now we've got another chamber we can specify. Let's make this auto charge. Cool. So now our chamber will automatically, our jump drive will automatically charge for us. I do think we still have to start it, so we click once. Yeah, my hands are not touching the mouse anymore, and my jump drive is charging. It's going to charge both charges of the jump drive now as well. so that that's pretty awesome. You know, so now we can jump twice, and the jump drive will keep itself full if possible, as long as there's power available and stuff like that. All right, so let's look at this chamber again, though. So we've got a couple of things we can do here. We have power efficiency up so that our jump drive requires less power to operate, which is really nice since we have a small reactor. We have multi-charge 1. Now, we could level this up if we wanted to, and that ends up using reactor capacity, and that would give us more jumps. So we've got a maximum of 4 jumps now. That basically gives us the equivalent of like what having 4 separate jump drives would have been before. And we only used 5 blocks to do that, instead of the like 400 or whatever ridiculous number you'd have had before. So that's amazing. That's super awesome. But it also means we sacrifice some of our skill points or our reactor charge or whatever they're calling it. And so we can't use those for something else. So I'm actually going to level this down because 2 jump drives is enough for me. And instead, I'm going to add another chamber here. And let's see if we can find a spot we can put it that doesn't really cause too much of a problem. We don't really have a good spot here now, do we? Unless we do, like... let's see, how can we do this? We can put the reactor here. We can put 2 blocks there. Yeah, like this. Cool, so that's going to be our last chamber. So that adds us another 5-block chamber. And our reactor's kind of weird, but our integrity is still okay, so that's what's important. I noticed our stabilization dropped, so we may have to include some more stabilizers. You can see over here we're at 82.3 instead of the 100 we were at before. But we left ourselves enough space that if we want to add more stabilizers, we totally can. Those aren't actually doing anything. That one did. We could add another group of stabilizers down here. 92. 93. I don't want to go that far with them. This is like visual design kind of decisions going on here. Let's see. That's probably okay. It doesn't have to be 100% stabilized. That's probably fine. Alright, and we still have 94 integrity on our stabilizers, so that's good. Okay, so let's do this last reactor now. Aha, so this auto charge is building off of this reactor FTL chamber now because we touched this conduit here. So that's causing us a problem. We need to move this conduit so that it's not touching both of these chambers. Now, here's something that I have a complaint with. Look at this overlay. There's so much going on here. It's hard to really tell what you're actually doing with everything highlighted like this. So I don't really know how you would work around it, but I'm not a huge fan of this. So we need to find another way to build this chamber so that it doesn't touch this conduit, or we can move this conduit, but there's not really a way to do that. Alright, so if we want to build the chamber differently, we could build it below. That'll work. Yeah, that works just fine. That works just fine. Alright, so now you can see this is linked to the base instead of to one of the other chambers. Alright, so let's specify this one. We're going to do on this one do we do jump distance yet? Yeah, let's do jump distance. And we'll level this up as high as we can. So that puts us at 100% reactor capacity used, but we're in the red. So we're over capacity. So that's not good. So we can level this down, and then that makes us green again. So our jump drive isn't quite as power efficient, but we can go really far, and it charges fast, and we can have multiple charges. So that's fair enough. And our reactor stabilizer, 92% is pretty good. Let's check this now. Yeah, so we're using about half of our reactor to charge the jump drive. You can see over here, this meter is flashing. So that's us charging our jump drive, right? Taking half of our reactor capabilities. Okay, and I want to be able to move as well while we're charging our jump drive. So let's apply thrust. We can, and we can move quickly, so that's good. Now, can we also charge our scanner, our jump drive, and move at the same time? Let's start the scanner up as well. So we can, but only just. But only just is fine, because how often are we really going to be needing to charge the scanner, the jump drive, and move at the same time? Not very frequently. So that is the power core of our ship, and our chamber setup and all that. The next thing to add are shields. Shields have integrity just like the thrusters and like the reactor. I'm only going to talk briefly about shields because they didn't change a whole lot, but I'm going to cover the changes real quick and then apply those and do the interior because this video is getting long as hell. So the way shields are different now, shields now have a kind of area of influence that is determined by the shield rechargers. Yeah, and those are going to have integrity as well. So a good structural shield thing is going to be something like, if we do this, then I think we can operate with that. And then now we've got two like different shield groups because those aren't touching. You can see over here active shields 1, inactive shields 1. So we want those to touch each other. And if we do just a crossbar like this, let's see, where is our structural integrity is 81, so we still have pretty decent integrity on our shields, and they're touching, and yeah, so the shield rechargers generate this bubble centering on the center of mass of the shield group, so that's a little bit confusing, but that's how that works. And the shield group is determined by, obviously, capacitors and rechargers and all those things. So there's that. Now, the bubble is not our shield. The shield works the same way it did before. The bubble just tells us where our shields are effective. So if we, for example, had a big long antenna on the end of this ship that stuck straight out the front out to about here, then this much of the antenna would not be covered by shields. So that could get shot and damaged without the shields affecting them. So that's how the shields work in general. Alright, so now I'm going to throw in a bunch of these shield capacitor blocks. And maybe some more of these rechargers so we can get some decent shielding going on. And I'll probably go ahead and do the interior as well, but we'll see what we come up with when I get back after this. Alright, so here she is, all finished. Excuse me. I got a bunch of shields in. I did pretty much the same interior I had on the other version because I figured, why not? Oh, we're open to space here. Okay, but we can fix this really quickly. We'll do that in a second. It's basically the same interior, but I had to make a few changes because our reactor is configured differently. And so I somehow took up an extra block of space, like of depth, with this reactor, but I got way more shields out of it. We've got 39,000 shields. The other one only had 17 or 18 or something like that. So we got way more out of this ship going on. That's much, much, much better. And transport and everything is still the same. The shields are better. Let's quickly fix that glass bit real quick. So that's an easy fix, though. We can just put glass across the entire ceiling like this. I did have a row of thrusters there before on the previous iteration. And I thought that looked pretty good, but yeah, we can't do the thrusters like that anymore, so whatever. This block, what was here? Probably thrusters? Let's just put a regular piece of hull block there, I guess. That'll be fine. Guys, I hope that this video was helpful. I hope you learned something about the power update. If you're anything like me and you hated the update right at first, then hopefully this video helped you hate it slightly less, because I was able to cram all the new stuff into my old ship, and it actually is way better than it was before. Let's check that final thrust to mass ratio actually as well while we're thinking about things that are better. Okay, if we look at thrusters, we ended up with 2.0 thrust to mass, so that's even better than our first attempt at this. So I think this Mark V was a success. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you liked the video, hit that handy dandy like button if you found it helpful in any way. I really appreciate that. And see you guys next time. Stay tuned.